I want to talk now about how you worked within the studio system, how you worked with the various departments, and how you got along with them, and how you worked with them on a picture. When you got ready to do a picture, when you saw the writer's first draft or whatever it was of the script, then how did it develop in your relationships with the various production departments and everything like that?
Well, you see, 20th is a wonderfully well organized company. I mean, it's wonderful, well organized, and they have wonderful departments. The departments are marvelous. Now, you must understand, when a script comes out, it's mimeographed. And that it may be a first draft, second draft, maybe a final draft. Yeah. But when that final draft goes through and it's mimeographed and it's put on the schedule for production, the head of the art department gets a copy of that, or maybe 2 copies of it. The wardrobe department gets a copy of that. Men's wardrobe and ladies' wardrobe gets a copy of it. The transportation department gets a copy of it. The construction, they get a copy of it. Everybody, every department head gets a copy of this, and he reads it. All right, now, you have a long room that's the shape of this with a long table across the end here. And the director sits in the middle here, and he has his assistant sit over here, and you have a studio executive sit over here. I mean, the man representing the studio production end sitting over here. And then somebody here. Now all through here are department heads. Now they have worked out what, we'll say transportation wants to ask you so many questions. So now you have to sit here, and transportation says, I note on such and such a location you're going to have, how many people you're going to have, and are these people going to be housed there, or where you're going to house them, and so forth, because he's got to figure what kind of transportation you're going to have for that back in here. The animal man over here is, how many horses are you going to use on so-and-so and so-and-so? How many automobiles are you going to have such, or what's going to be? All right, the wardrobe has a budget made out on so many, how much you're going to change the clothes on such and such and such and such and such a time. All right, now we figure in this there are 14 sequences, there'll be 14 changes of costume. And then you say, but I don't think we can double back on a costume from here to here. I mean, you know, being very consistent. And then the men's costume will do the same thing. All right, well, now you sit and you answer all the questions that they have in here. The assistant director has had this, what you call a breakdown sheet. And it says on page so-and-so and such, and it tells them and gives you an idea of what's going to be in it. It tells you what's going to comprise of. Well, they all have that. They turn to that. Then they ask you the questions about that. And you go on through it. All right, now, from this, they go, and each one makes up a budget. Then you add all that budget together, then the headache starts. But you see, in these days, we were, the only picture that I ever went up into $5 million on was Wilson. And Wilson was a tremendously big and a very elaborate picture, which we did a lot of at Washington, and we worked all over with it. It was a very elaborate, even today. The only thing against Wilson was the title. If it had been called something else, it would have been a tremendous success, because it was, I consider Wilson one of the best pictures that I ever made in my life. And it finally paid out, you know, but just paid out. Maybe made 6% on its money or something like that, you see, through television and all that kind of thing. But in that way, there's a good working agreement between you and all the different departments. And if you handle yourself right, all the departments are for you. If you're not complaining about their department, if they make a mistake, you tell them so. And if it's your mistake, well, you admit it. I was wrong in this, and go on, just like any other human being. That's all it is, because no one's infallible. But I never had the slightest bit of trouble. I mean, with any of the departments or anything like that. And have been always able to get whatever I wanted, but I have always tried to say that my wants were not unreasonable. Now, we had a scene, for instance, we were in Arizona down near Nogales on David and Bathsheba. And of course, the cameraman is your right arm. The cameraman has got to work with you, or the cameraman and the director, if they can't work together, they might just as well get out of the country, because it's the only thing you're going to get is going to be bad. And I wanted an effect of where David made that trek up to Gilboa, the island, you know, where the big battle was fought, you know, and where the king was killed and all that. I wanted to do that, and I wanted to do it in daytime. And the studio wanted to build an artificial rock in the studio, and one of the coach came and I said, it doesn't look like a rock to me. And over in Arizona, I found a cliff where these people could have had their backs to the wall, as they explained. I found a cliff that was in there, and this sloped up, and it was pictorial as it could be. And it was natural, and it was real rock. And I had many scenes, I mean, to do there. So, but I wanted to do it at night. So Leon Shamroy and I went out to this location, and at 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night. It was no good. We went out at 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, at 6 in the morning, and at 6 in the morning, the sun was just coming over the top of the hill. And Leon, of course, in my estimation, is one of the greatest cameramen that's ever been. We took a shot shooting into the sun. Well, now, color, if you shoot backlight with color and put no fill light in it, it makes the most beautiful silhouette in the world. You see, it's the most beautiful silhouette. Well, we photographed the Peck coming up like that, and he came up into a big close-up like this. Well, I stayed with him, and finally we had to cross the sun. We knew that. We took a little tree that was about that big around and planted it right here, and came up this way, and when we did the PAM on that little tree. It was close. It was that close to the lens, you see. You could just shoot by it, and it would PAM like that, and let him go on. Well, we actually photographed that at 5:45 in the morning. And but you see, there are many people, these people that say, well, I wouldn't get up that early, I wouldn't do that or anything. But you see, with Peck, he's the type of a guy that he's just interested in making a good picture, that's all. He just wants a picture to be good, and he'll give everything that he has for it. It has to be good. Shamroy's the same way. And I'm the same way. That what we're trying to make that the best that it can possibly be. And you can't be lazy and make good pictures.
I know you fly your own plane and look for locations. Why specifically do you like to go out and use locations even on pictures that might not necessarily call for them, like Jesse James, for example, which could have been done here, but wasn't, obviously?
Well, now, and you're speaking of Jesse James, and you say it could have been done here. You can do any picture, any place. But if you had a big formal occasion, we'll say at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, and everything was white tie and tails, and the two of us walked in dressed the way we are, would we look out of place, or would we look real, or what? Well, now, that's exactly the way I feel about a location. Now, when you go back to the days of Jesse James, and I mean, you're bringing this up, going back to the days of Jesse James, you have to think in the period of Jesse James, just at the end of the Civil War. And they had the old rail fences, the old snake fences, and these snake fences are all grown up with different kinds of sprouts and elder bush and all of these different things. Well, now, the reason I went to Missouri, there were many reasons. The first thing, when Nunnally Johnson had finished the screenplay, I flew down to Kansas City and got a car and drove out to Kearney and to the Jesse James home where he was raised. And his, Frank James' son, was a retired lawyer who was living there. And the monument of Jesse James, where he was buried in the corner of the yard, started out as one of those little, what do you call it, peaks like that, you know.
Yeah.
It was about almost as high as this room, but the tourists had chipped it down. Everybody ducked a chip off of it until it was about this high. Well, I sat under the tree by that grave talking to his nephew, getting information, and him showing me the guns and showing me where the bomb was thrown through the house and all of these things. And I got first-hand information that that was not available. And I brought all this back to Nunnally Johnson. And Nunnally was so delighted with it that he made quite a number of changes by putting these things, even though he knew I was going to use them that way. But Nunnally is one of the most accommodating and one of the best and most perfect Finnish writers that I know of. He incorporated all these things into the story. Now, in talking with this man, I got the feeling of the period. A friend of mine who was the vice president of the Phillips Petroleum Company had told me about Pineville, Missouri. And when I did my preliminary work on the screenplay, I mean, now even as well as Nunnally Johnson writes and all like that, I took the screenplay and went to Florida and spent 2 weeks in isolation, just working the little things that I wanted to do and this and that I mean, for economy's sake, for one thing. In other words, to try to build one of these fences out here would have cost a fortune, and then it would have looked like a phony. It would not have looked like what it was at all. To build the houses that we used back there out here would have been motion picture sets, and there's nothing around them would have matched with them. But you see, the entire area has got to have a feeling about it. So then I had Bob Webb meet me at Bartlesville, Missouri, Oklahoma. And then we drove over to Pineville, Missouri. And we covered every side road, every little creek. We covered everything. Well, I laid out there exactly where I would shoot this, where I would shoot that, where I would do this. Well, now you had some expanse. I mean, you were not having to shoot in a little corner right here. Everything just hummed up. So all you'd make is a TV close-up. Yeah. You had the whole world behind you, and all of it was in, was in character. I mean, the trees. You take in that country a field that has been what they call new land, where they've gone through and cut off the stumps from this high. And it's planted in some kind of grass or wheat or whatever it may be, and they mow it with the hand scythe and a reaper, they call it. And I mean, it's something that this country at Pineville was like Kearney and that area was at the time of Jesse James. And you were not limited to having telephone poles in your way. You weren't limited to anything. And in the town of Pineville, here was a church. I mean, here was a courthouse that was built prior to the Civil War, that was still standing, was still active. And when Bob Webb and I drove into the town and we wanted to see the mayor, they said the mayor's over there cutting the courthouse lawn. So we went over and met the gentleman, and we made arrangements with him, and he got the city council together, and we had, they were going to take us to dinner, and I said, no, we'll take you to dinner. I said, I want to do the talking. And we went to the Cave restaurant, And there I explained to them, I said, this is no small operation. I said, when we move in here, you're going to think Ringling Brothers three-ring circus is coming. With so many trucks, so many people, with all this. Where are you going? Somebody wrote up and said, where are you going to house all these people? I said, that's also going to be a problem. We're going to ask a lot of help on that matter. We rented every house. People moved out of the houses, and the house that Tyrone Power lived in, and Brian Donlevy, I think, and Tyrone Power lived in the same house, and people moved out and gave them the house and put a cook in there. I had a house and all this, and we had it because there was not hotel facilities. That was in a little town of Noel, just near there. And it's another thing I'll say. For instance, when I did David and Bathsheba, I'll jump off of just say for a moment. When I did David and Bathsheba, here I had to have a country that was biblical country. I had chariots carrying across through the open country. I had all these marches up. I had the city of Jerusalem. I had all this. I couldn't just have the walls of Jerusalem here and telegraph poles sticking up and antennas and TV antennas on the background. So I found a spot back of Nogales, Arizona, where you could go out and you were free and you had the world behind you. And I had, for instance, the time that when David came into Jerusalem, where John, what's his name, I met him. Well, I had a shot of this this chariot coming down the hill around the road like this, right up close to the camera. And of course we only had 11 camels, so I put the 11 camels in here and we pan by the 11 camels that way. Now when I cut down, I put the 11 camels on the other side, so we multiplied these camels until we had, we were in the time that was the principal means of transportation. You couldn't just have one camel, so by the time we got through these camels, we had 150 camels in the picture, you see. But that is one of the great interesting things about picture making. Now, there's some of these people of today that get in and they would want 150 camels. Well, it'd be fine if you have to put them all single file. Well, if you want to do that, go to Egypt or go to North Africa where they have camels in abundance. Go there and do that. But I couldn't take them. You couldn't do David and Bathsheba over there. You couldn't take the cast and take all this and go there, and you can't go there with the second unit and shoot anything. So I had everything here, and it looked like biblical country.
You mentioned these new managements coming in. How did this affect what you did, or did it?
And what?
How did the new managements affect the work you did, or what kind of decisions did you have to get from them? Did you get decisions from them easily, or were they difficult about it, or?
No, I'll tell you, I have always been this way, that if I go out to make a picture, I assume that obligation and go on and make the picture. And I'm not disturbed about whether you're the manager or somebody else is the manager or someone else is the manager. I'm not, that is managing a studio or running a company is one thing entirely. The moment that assignment comes over to me to do the picture, I assume the responsibility of that and go ahead with it. And that was one of the things that made me feel, I have such a great feeling for Darryl Zanuck. Now, Darryl Zanuck is a man who can make decisions, but he's always listening. Here's a man that can hear more and listen and be more intent on listening and hearing and get more information than he can by talking. And he gives you the assignment to do a picture, and he will write you love notes every day. It says, saw the rushes, they're great. Saw the rushes, they're wonderful. Saw the rushes, they're great. I thought the scene that so-and-so did today was tremendous. He's always giving you that little urge, I mean, to go on. At the same time, if he sees something that he's concerned about or doesn't understand, he writes a little note. He said, would you stop by the office on your way in tonight? You go in. He says, you know, that scene of so-and-so and so, what you had in mind about it. You, oh, said, I hadn't thought of it that way, you see. And he's a great, I thought Zanuck was the greatest studio head that I had ever seen, for the simple reason because he says, that's your problem, you see. And he helps you in every way on earth and never interferes with anything. Never interferes with anything in the world. He wants to stimulate your imagination and for you to go right on, but he doesn't want you to throw all the money away.
Yeah.
He inspires you to the point of you want to be economical with what you're doing. And in other words, you take, if you're going to reproduce this Taft building across the way here, there are many ways to do it without building the Taft building, you see. And there's certain, what parts of it you're going to use, or how are you going to use it, or what. We'll say, on a picture like David and Bathsheba, Zanuck read the script, and he liked the script very much. And we had a conference. I mean, through the whole, we have a story conference and the whole thing. All right, that finished it. Now, Zanuck never went to a budget meeting in his life. He just stays away from it purposely, so that he has an opinion. Now, if he sat through a budget meeting and listened to this department, then that department, and the other department, you know how budget meeting is.
Yeah.
You have the transportation, you have the construction, you have everything there. You have probably 12 different departments in a tremendous big room, and each one of these people have their conception of how they're going to furnish you all the things you need in this. Well, Zanuck keeps away from that. For the simple reason, because if he went there and became indoctrinated with all these things, he would have no way in the world, but other than to go along with it. But by staying away from it, then he would say to me, he said, Henry, the budget on this picture is $400,000 more than we have money to spend. Now, some way or another, you must get with the art department and the different departments and see how you can cut $400,000, because I can't recommend to New York to put $400,000 more in this picture than we have allotted to the making of it. All right, I go to the art department and I begin to trim the sets and how we can do this and how we can twist that, where we'll do this. And instead of doing that here, let's do it on location. And build a little something on location. And like the hut where the sheep herder was in, we built that in daytime and put it on another little hill, and it wasn't much bigger than this room, and put a couple of lights in it to illuminate it and shot it just at sundown. And here you are out in a biblical country, and the house was actually there and lighted, you see. And well, those are things you have to know the location. You have to know that. Well, you can't expect a man sitting at a desk and running a studio to be able to find those things for you, but he has confidence and faith enough in you to know that you are going to use the best judgment that you have, and that you are going to do that and know how to use it when you get to it. And well, then I get through with this department, that department, and we'll switch this and we'll do that on location. We'll build a little this, and how we'll do the big set of Jerusalem and all this. When we get to it, we finish the picture, and we're $75,000 under the budget. And it's same as 12 o'clock high. You take in 12 o'clock high. There had been 2 or 3 scripts written of 12 o'clock high. I was in Europe when this was done. I mean, when the script was written.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back here, Zanuck says, I have saved this picture until you got back. He said, I have gone through 3 scripts with 3 different people, and I am fed up with it right up to here. Until he says, I am right now, I'm not, I have no ideas, I haven't anything, but I want you to take it and read it, and if you see in it a picture that you want to do, it's yours.
Mm.
All right, I read it, I went through it, and I said, you know, this can be made in a lot of things I disagree with in the script. But I said, this can be made into a great picture. Listen, I'm going to tell you what you do. He said, I want you to take Cy Bartlett, who was one of the writers.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to take Cy Bartlett and get the hell way off from the studio.
Mm-hmm.
And you and Bartlett work the script out the way that you want it. Then I want to read it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I took Bartlett, and I was already now preparing, you see, to do it. So you put on the, immediately I said we're going to put on the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And I took Bartlett to Eglin Field in Florida. And when I got around to him, we started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we worked until 12. We put an hour for lunch. We spent 30 minutes just sitting and you know, and talking about something else. Went back to work, worked up till 7 o'clock. Then we had dinner and forgot about it. And we did that every day and for 7 days. And on the 7th day, well, we worked till 2 o'clock in the morning to get the thing finished and get him out of there. And he left and came back here to have it copied. But he got it copied, and I got back here and I went through it and made a couple of notes, and Cy and I discussed a few little things and made a few little changes here, and then had it mimeographed and sent it down to Zanuck, and he read it, says it's the best script I ever read in my life. I mean, he's that flexible, that willing, and he can see more defects in a script than any man I ever saw in my life. He's got the keenest eye for reading. He's got the keenest ear for listening of any man I've ever been associated with.
Yes, Nunley Johnson said that Zanuck seemed to have a kind of radar, that he would be reading a script and suddenly you could almost hear his mind go tick, 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 that something was wrong. And he could go back a page and say, that's where it goes wrong.
Exactly right. That's the best description you've ever, that he has that radar.
You did another one with Peck also, the Gunfighter.
Yeah.
And one of the most famous things about that is this mustache on Gregory Peck that Zanuck said lost him money. Was this mustache put on Peck primarily to make the 2 characters in 12 O'Clock High and the Gunfighter look different because he had done the one right before?
Well, you see, the fact of it was this. You take Jimmy Ringo, that's how Jimmy Ringo looked.
Mm.
Did you ever read that book's got all the gangsters in it, what do you call it? All of the gunmen in it. I don't know, I can't think of it. But I think it's a well-known book. But anyway, the pictures of Jimmy Ringo in it. And Nunley Johnson was definitely against him having the mustache, because he thought that Zanuck wouldn't like it. Zanuck went east or something, I've forgotten what it was now. And I had Greg grow the mustache. And I went over to the barber shop, and they gave him a haircut right straight around here, which was exactly the haircut of the time of Jimmy Ringo, and also, in looking through this this book, we had all these pictures in it. Only through the book, Nunley Johnson presented me with the book. Makes me so mad I can't think of the title of it, because you know it as well as I do. He presented me with a book, and from the book I convinced him I should put the mustache on Greg, and I cut his hair right around here. And his clothes and all like that. I even had his coat. I had the coat made, one of those split tails, you know, and the buttons in the back and all that is made. But he was still dubious because he was afraid Zanuck would not like this.
This was before shooting started, that you talked it over with Johnson about the mustache?
Oh yes, this was shooting started. And I had the mustache on, he was growing it, and Greg began to love the mustache. Well, anyway, the mustache got to a certain length, you see, and I told the makeup man, I said, now keep it right like that. Don't let it change that way at all. We went on location, we shot everything, we did the whole picture all the way down, and the ending of the picture, no, the beginning of the picture, the saloon, the first room where they met, was the last thing that I shot in the picture. You know, you never shoot anything in context in pictures, but I shot the beginning at the last. And it struck me, I said, that mustache is a little bit longer, it's a little longer than we've had it through the picture. And I just looked at the rushes, well, the makeup man swore, Greg says it hasn't changed, it's exactly, and he loved the thing and all this, and I put the picture together and ran it, and ran it for Johnson and for Zanuck. And I knew Nunley was dubious as the devil with the mustache. And we get in the projection room, and Zanuck doesn't say a word. He should say it like this. He says, I would give $50,000 of my own money if I could get that mustache off of that guy. I thought Nunley Johnson was going to fall out of the chair. He didn't say a word. I thought he says, well, he Nunley, I think felt like he wanted to defend me, and yet he didn't know what it just took him completely, because Nunley was against the mustache to begin with, for the simple reason that Zanuck was. Zanuck says this man has a young following. The young girls, you know, like this man, that mustache, I'm afraid he's going to kill it. And I said, well, you know, what would you want me to do, Darryl? Just take the uniform off and put the clothes on, just change his clothes to change him from the general to Jimmy Ringo? Oh, he says, God bless you, Henry. He said, I'm not complaining about that at all. He said, this is a Remington. Remington couldn't have done it better than this. But I'm only thinking of box office appeal. I said, well, I'm only interested in making the pictures, and I want to make pictures that sell. And I believe that this picture will sell because it has interest. And I said, the thing that made us do it in the first place, I said, is Nunley said to me one time, here's a story about one thing. A man that has been a bad man and trying to be a good man, nobody will let him. And I said, that's the story we told. And I said, it's not a story of a juvenile, it's not Tyrone Power's story, this is Jimmy Ringo. And I said, go and look, and trigonometry. Trigonometry is the name of the book. Did you ever read it?
No.
You ought to read it sometime. Trigonometry. You ought to read it sometime. It's a well-known book. It's a good book. It's got all Billy the Kid. Well, Billy the Kid was a piker compared to Ringo. There's a minister's son that killed his 21st man on his 22nd birthday. I mean, and when you're dealing with that group of people, you see. So the picture went out, and the reviews were tremendous. I mean, good reviews, and did good business. It didn't do as much as Peck's picture that he did called Yellow Skies, but it did good business. And the Yellow Skies you never hear mentioned, and you hear
Gunfighter
mentioned all the time.
Yeah. Did you have any idea when you were making it that it was going to build this reputation over the years that it has as being one of the classic westerns?
How can you do that? You can't do that. When you go to do something, it's like Babe Ruth. didn't know he was going to hit a home run every time he went to bat. He fanned out as many times as almost anyone, but he hit more home runs than anyone. But he had a great batting average. He had the best batting average of all of them. Well, you take a lot of the ball players. Every baseball player that goes to bat is up there to hit a home run. That's what he's hitting for. He's hitting over that fence. And every director that's worth a tinker's damn, every time he has a picture, is trying to hit one over the fence. And if you don't do the best you can, don't use all your facilities, use all your faculties, do everything to try to make this real, why, you're not doing your job. And the money you get has no influence on what kind of a picture you make. Because if you're a director, you can make just as good a picture for $1 a year as you can for $500,000 a picture. It just depends upon what you have here and how you use it.